so lucky. I mean, we have all these wonderful people who have created such big shoes to fill, but it feels, I mean, amazing and so lucky to be able to put our little stamp on it.
I think the thing that means the most for me is because as a fan, I just want to do right by the fans, and I know if I wasn't a part of this movie, I would be very disappointed if it wasn't good, and so I was really worried that I wasn't worried. I actually had a lot of faith, but I was nervous because of course you never know how something you're filming will turn out. And God, I'm so happy. It was so fantastic, and fans are gonna really love it.
We've kind of been saying that Bloodlines is bigger heart, higher stakes.
Yeah. And I think it means a little bit more just because everybody's known each other. And it feels like, you know, in the other 5, it's everybody rooting for death. And I think in this one, everybody's rooting for the family.
Yeah.
You're
And
a
it's
little
the first
conflicted.
time,
It's not as easy.
I play Charlie. I play Stephanie's brother. Just a teenager whose sister is going a little crazy.
I'm Kaitlyn. I play Stefani. Stefani is a college student who has been struggling with night terrors for the past 3 months, and they've been really hard for her. It's been, you know, her grades have not been doing so well in school, so she goes home and tries to get some help from her family to help her out with these nightmares and get them to stop.
And I play Darlene. I am these 2 beautiful creatures' mother, and I play a woman who made the decision to leave her children and her husband 10 years prior because her nightmares and anxiety and fear of what was going to happen potentially to her children was overtaking, and she wanted to spare them the childhood that she grew up with.
We spent a few days in rehearsal together preparing to get to set, just to find like the family dynamics of this, and that's not something that you get in TV and film. So getting the opportunity to meet them and work with them and just kind of like flesh out who these people actually are and put our little spin on what the script had given us was like the biggest gift in the world. I think it made the movie, I think it created the bigger stakes.
I think you feel it. Zadam really gave us all the freedom to ask stupid questions, make stupid choices, get to know each other, challenge each other, ask, you know, really gave us time and space to build a family and figure out, solve problems before we started filming. Because once you start, it's fast and furious.
To be surrounded by so many talented, and, you know, they're not only talented, they're some of the most genuinely kind, caring, thoughtful, giving people I've ever met. And funny.
Oh my
so
gosh,
funny.
That other room in there, Anna, Owen, and Richard, I mean, there were days where we could barely make it through takes because on
It was too
ends
hard.
of takes somebody would change lines and you just could barely.
You would have to look away. You couldn't make
No,
eye
it's
contact.
a really warm, generous, giving group.
And that just makes their job so much easier.
It kind of felt like a birthday party.
Is it right? Is it wrong
Yeah.
to tell you it was really fun?
It was so fun. It was like a birthday party. Everyone had a birthday on the set. So, like, that's what it
I
really
mean, half
felt
of
like.
we wanted to show up because Craig, our producer, would constantly walk around with pieces of stunts or pictures or test.
You're like, look at this.
Test, you know,
And it's
And that's
just a
what
we're working
severed
on that.
arm.
So you want to see how it's all going to come together. So we would all want to show up and see because you can't really picture it.
Yeah.
And the deaths are good.
And that's what that's what these movies are about. Just want to see how they all piece together. The gymnast one really messed with my brain, and I remember I was old enough to watch that one in the theaters with my friend. So I watched that one in theaters with my friend, and just the build-up of it is exactly what you want in every single one of these Final Destination movies. It creates that anxiety. So yeah.
And I hadn't seen any of them. So when I got this, I started watching and binged them all through because I had to know the world because it's a very specific genre, right? It's a really special little niche with humor, and you know, there's no guy hiding behind a door. There's no killer coming after you. It's death. So I watched them all back to back, and you know, it's overwhelming to see that many deaths and that. But the suntan bed just is horrifying, right? That's a brutal one.
What a way to go. Oh,
I think
God.
the pool, the suction death for me is pretty traumatizing. It's a rough one.
The plus is that they lucked out on the creme de la creme of Vancouver crews, and our crew was amazing.
I think one of my favorite things about making this movie was how much everyone wanted to be there and
Absolutely.
how excited everyone was to be making a Final Destination movie, and everyone was so happy every day because most of them were huge fans of the franchise. And when you're in an environment full of like-minded people who want the same thing, who want to make a great product, it just makes everything so much easier.
I'm biased, but I think the opening premonition is always one of the best parts of the film. So getting to be a part of that feels really special. It was well balanced though. Like, I think they were so smart in really breaking up the big action sequence into tiny little pieces. So that I would go to set some days and it would be 2/8 of a page. Fortunately, we were able to do that, which is a blessing. Because things just take so long, especially when fire is involved and glass breaking, and they really scheduled the time to like make sure everyone felt safe and comfortable, and we would rehearse a lot. So by the time they went to film, we knew we only needed 1 or 2 takes of it. I adore them. I've like, every time I get a question about them, it's like, you don't get to ask any more questions in our time allotted because I'm just gonna talk about them for the rest of this interview. I had never worked with co-directors before, which was a really cool experience. And again, like, I feel a movie like this that has so much going on, it was so helpful to have 2 leaders on set and they could really divide and conquer. I had worked with Adam previously Adam and I actually have a lot of weird connections. His son was on Stargirl with me, so I would see him on set as like the dad, and then he was like the director, and I was like, what is going on? So I just like having a friend on set too is also really nice. They're both really creative people, always being like, try this aloud. Improv, I'm sure you've heard of the silent takes you've heard it? Okay, I'll give it to you anyways. Yeah. Okay. So they would do these things called silent takes, which I had never done before, where you do the entire scene, but you don't say any of the lines. And within that, you find these little moments, because I can't say words. And so I think by doing that, you find these little moments that aren't on the paper, and it's the white on the script, which is really fun. And I know I'm in the future, I'm gonna be like, hey, director, can we do a silent take? And they're gonna look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, talk to Zadam. I obviously knew what they were. I feel like these movies, like, no pun intended, but like outlive themselves, where I've always, every time I drive, I've been so scared to drive behind a log truck or something with pipes, and I never knew why. I just thought it was like this human nature fear that I had. And then when I got casted, I went back and watched the first movie, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've had this fear this entire time because of this movie, and I didn't even know it was from this movie. So I think even the people that didn't necessarily like grow up watching it the entire generation was affected by this franchise. And so to get to introduce it to a new generation while still satisfying the missing 14 years that the people who loved the first 5, I think that's so special, and they do such a good job of like keeping the story fresh while honoring the classic You Can't Cheat Death. To say anxiety feels so like poor, but I feel like if you're going to a Final Destination movie, that's what you want. Like, you want to see a crazy death that gives you like a new fear. So anxiety.
It's a dream come true. I've been a fan of it since I was 11 when I saw the first one. Well, I saw the second one first, actually. Then I went back and watched all of them many times. So it's a dream come true for me.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, I'm just excited to be in such a amazing movie. I know that maybe sounds a little cheesy, but like when I watched it, I was just like, oh, this is so good.
Goodness.
Yeah. I mean, I just was so excited, like, especially to see the first chunk of it, which we didn't film any of the like 1960s, you know what I mean? We weren't in that part, so that whole first segment,
So cool.
I had so much fun watching it.
I play Bobby Campbell, and I'm the youngest of this sibling
This bit.
ship.
Yep.
And yeah, that's about it. I think Bobby likes to, not only does he go on this giant adventure with his cousins and family to try to avoid death, but he's just a simple, nice guy that likes turtles, and he likes, dinners with his family and barbecues.
Yeah.
And he loves jumping on a trampoline.
Simple guy. Simple man.
No.
I play Julia, who is the sister to these two, and Stephanie's cousin. And I think Julia is she's very close to me, actually. I have brothers in real life, and I feel like she's just like, takes no bull
Yeah.
from her brothers, and she's very loyal and protective, and so I think she's very skeptical of Stephanie's whole thing with death.
Death conspiracy. I play Erik Campbell. I'm the eldest of us, both in the movie and off in reality.
He's method.
Yeah.
Method
Had to make
age-wise.
sure I was older than you, and I certainly am. I am sort of the one. I'm tattooed up. I kind of dressed like him today. Note the fringe. And
Sold his car for this, by the way.
I did actually.
Yeah, they had to go pick
Jack,
him up.
yeah.
They had to pick him up from the store where he got it.
True. I'm sort of like, a sarcastic, typical guy in that way, but a very much a man that loves his family more than anything, which I think
Trying your
kind of
best.
runs in our family, which is nice.
Eric,
But like, we really
We're all
love
trying our
family.
best. It's just we're just kind of we fall short on everything we attempt to do. Sure.
Well, mainly, I guess, just listening to Stephanie, right? That's the main thing we feel that is believing her.
They were
Edit
super
that.
forthcoming and super nice, and they pushed us even from the auditions. They were kind of pushing us to have fun and be
Open up,
creative
be
and
free.
open
Yeah.
up and sort of decide for ourselves who we wanted the characters to be. Not that it's super important in something like this, but I think it did add a level of
I think
believability.
I kind of think it kind of makes the movie, being able to have these improv rehearsals
It adds
ahead
the
of
stakes
time.
for sure.
Well, I just think that the thing that makes the movie so special is how much you care about the family and the relationships. And so giving us the extra time to build those relationships in improv rehearsals so that by the time we got to set and the relationships were just already there. We didn't have to
Yeah.
waste any time on set because we had kind of hashed it out in rehearsal. So I was really grateful to have that. I wish I could do that on every movie.
And then it
Improv.
allowed us to have the freedom
Yeah.
and the comfortableness with everyone to be
Yeah.
like, you know what, I can say it. Why don't I just say it?
Yeah,
Yes,
we felt
and-
very close after
Yes,
that.
and a lot of yes, and.
I want to see the tech. I want to see
Yeah.
how they're going to do it. And especially because this movie does so much practical. I really want to I'm like, did anyone else get a fake head? What do you guys have? What's your,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How are they going to pull this off? I think
Yeah.
also we all understood that we all really, really cared. So I feel like even on our death days, we wanted to be there to kind of support each other and reassure each other of am I doing okay? Are we doing all right?
And I think
you
you also know the movie is the deaths. So you're though it's I came in on my day off to watch people die and to meet Tony Todd.
It was incredible. He was the warmest, most welcoming. Because that's the thing. We were there most days on this movie. He only came in for a day or two, but we all knew it's his set. It's not ours. We were just there, and he was so welcoming, so incredible, and he gave us just tons of advice, but the type of advice that was just make sure you enjoy yourself.
Yeah.
He was the most welcoming, kindest man that you would hope him to be.
And stepping into something like this too, it's it feels like something that wasn't very. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not deserved, but it was just an amazing treat and gift that he gave us that time to come and be a part of this one and kind of not hand over the baton, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah,
Kind of wish us luck. And
It's almost like he blessed the movie with
Yeah.
the Tony Todd.
I feel like everyone was like, okay, Tony was here.
Well, we were pitching our hearts out, telling them about all the cool things we wanted to do as far as new set pieces and make the characters really interesting. And then as we were doing that, the fireplace behind us on our Zoom window started to light the room on fire. And all the Warner Brothers executives started pointing in concern, and we got up out of our chairs, put the fire out, turned on this big ceiling fan to air out the smoke, and everyone at that point kind of figured, oh, this is probably a joke, and started clapping and thinking that was great, not realizing that suddenly the ceiling fan would fall out of the ceiling and chop Adam's head off. Which was, a way of giving all the Warner Brothers folks a way of experiencing what a Final Destination movie is going to be like if we got the chance to make it.
It was so exciting to be able to jump into the Final Destination world as big fans, but also to make the movie for a new generation, because it's been 14 years since the last Final Destination movie. And so people who were only 4 years old at the time are now 18. And so we were making the movie for them as well, so that both types of people could enjoy it. New viewers, this is their first Final Destination movie, and big fans who know every little Easter egg that we've hidden inside the movie. And that was a really fun challenge.
That was really the thing that got us the most excited, because Final Destination 5 has this incredible ending that sort of feels like it perfectly wraps up the franchise. And so our first question when we heard about the next one was, well, how do you do anything that kind of can even begin to kind of undo that incredible ending? And John Watts' idea about making it about a family and starting the premonition back in the 60s and having this family tree that kind of allows the film to still do everything we love about Final Destination, but also put a lot more meat on the bone. Make it about a family, all the different secrets that a family has, the grudges, the alliances, and the stakes just become so much higher because people are trying to save their family members that they love. And that just made us so excited about making this movie.
Casting on this movie was incredibly difficult because we knew we wanted the sort of grounded emotional performances, but we weren't just looking for one person. We had to look for people that all work together as a seamless family. So when we found our incredible cast, we were so excited. And we also did a lot of rehearsal with them to kind of set a tone of shared history. We did scenes from the movie in rehearsal, and also scenes that weren't even in the script to kind of give them that sense of shared history. And then on set, we did the script, but then also made them feel free to improvise, which had some really interesting discoveries throughout. When you improvise with actors, 95% of it you don't use. But the 5 to 10% that you do use is just gold. And there's lines in the movie from every actor that were improvised that are just some of the biggest reactions in the movie, because it's the real stuff that came out of their mouth when they were in the moment.
Having this film feel practical was incredibly important to us because we feel like the fear is most visceral when you believe that it's actually happening. And so that meant building humongous sets that we could light on fire, people that we could light on fire, heads that we could crush, bodies that we could rip open with all the special effects makeup teams, the stunts teams, the special effects teams, and all the safety people involved in that to make sure that it's all done incredibly without any horrible accidents happening, which is very key on a Final Destination movie. And that's also in collaboration with the visual effects team around it. We kind of come at it from what we call the sort of Guillermo del Toro school of cinema, which is do as much as you can practically, knowing that visual effects are going to be able to help it. And so there's a lot of magic that happens with visual effects to allow that practical centerpiece to feel as real as possible. And I think it really leads to something that you see in the movie theater because of that, because it feels like you need to see it on as big a screen possible, because you know that we actually lit all those people on fire and we actually blew that building apart and all that type of stuff. It's something that you want to see in a big theater.
A few things lead into building an iconic death. The first is a sense of unpredictability, because in Final Destination, when someone has a target on their back, that they're going to die. So you have to misdirect the audience and keep them guessing about how it's going to happen. The second, I think, is a sense of irony or a sense of humor. Basically, death has to be clever enough to kill them in a way that kind of tickles your, sense of irony. And the last thing, I think, is relatable elements. Making the objects that make up the Rube Goldberg things that you're familiar with in your daily life. If it was all sci-fi objects or something, you wouldn't feel it as much as if it's small things that you're used to, like a wheelchair and a peanut butter cup and a vending machine. So that makes it more horrific because they're things that you encounter in your everyday life. We have so many favorites.
Yeah. I think a few that we keyed in on that kind of were great lessons for us. One was the balance beam screw on FD5, because so much tension is coming from such a tiny little object. And that was a big inspiration for the backyard barbecue that we have. And then also one of my favorites is this what we call the spaghetti death from FD2, where a character throws spaghetti out the window as a small little detail, and then all this horrible stuff happens to him in his kitchen. He gets stuck in the sink, the place is on fire, everything's exploding. He finally escapes and he's safe. except he slips on the spaghetti that he threw out the window. And that sort of setup and payoff element we did all the way through the movie, just because there's so much fun and delight that comes from that.
Brec, who plays Iris, young Iris, in the opening sequence, I mean, she is a movie star. She opens the movie, you know, and comes off as this sort of optimistic, naive, sweet, you know, young woman that's part of this couple, but she's got a secret that she's hiding. And I love the nuances she brought to the performance. And you sort of, you know, root for her throughout that sequence. But then when the disaster starts, she turns into this, you know, epic action hero. One thing not a lot of people know is Brec was on Fear Factor. She was on a Celebrity Fear Factor that they did, and doing crazy stunts. And she's really fearless, you know. So we had her running through this set that was on fire, you know, sliding down this ramp, you know, tumbling, and anything we asked her to do, she just sort of, you know, faced with fearlessness, and it really comes off for that opening sequence. You know, should we go through each other person individually?
The rest of the family was really special to kind of cast because we had to find a group of actors that all felt like they had chemistry together, but also feel like they're related and also feel like they have history and grudges and secrets and all that type of stuff. And we searched all over the world for these amazing actors, and it was so much fun to bring them all together.
People do their best work when they're having fun, when they feel most creative, when there's that sense of play. You know, we're all connecting to our inner children, especially making a movie like this that is so much fun. And so trying to keep a sense of lightness on set, encouraging the actors to riff off each other and play around with their creativity, just leads to great discoveries.
I think people incorrectly assume that horror movie sets are a very depressing, dark, scary place to be. I've always found that horror movie sets are the most silly and fun place to be because everyone's running around covered in fake blood, laughing about how crazy and silly everything is. And so if anyone has the opportunity to go to a horror film set, I'm sure they'll find out that it's a very fun place to be. We approach all the films that we do to give the audience all the different emotions. We try and make films that aren't really just one thing, that there's moments where you're screaming, there's moments where you're laughing, there's moments where you're even crying in this film. I think in general we tried to hone in on this idea of the audience should be covering their eyes with a huge smile on their face as a way of being on the edge of their seat and horrified, but also laughing and having a really great ride. And we've had the privilege of seeing this film with huge audiences, and all of those things are in display. It's really a film that's made with the people you see it with, because there's so much of this sort of participatory element to these films, and I really encourage people to see it with a big audience because it's a really fun experience that they won't forget.
The one thing about making Final Destination Bloodlines after 25 years, it makes me realize how much my knees hurt, because I got so old making this franchise and being involved in it from 1997 until now. However, I look forward to having the pending release of Final Destination whatever delivered at my eulogy. So we should all be so grateful to be involved in something that not only has become sort of a fan favorite, but has stood the test of time and is something worthy of being remembered for. The thing that makes Final Destination as a franchise, I think both evergreen and I think it could go on forever, is it's relatable. Every single element of these death set pieces is something that we might find ourselves in, we have been in, or we know someone who has experienced. So that instant relatability, I think, can go on forever. And the take-home factor, that's why you leave the theater, you had a great time, and then you go to the elevator to go up to where you parked your car, and you're like, this is a bad idea, I'm taking the stairs. That immediacy is what makes Final Destination, I think, both evergreen and it will last forever because of it. John Watts, when he came to us with the idea of having it follow the lineage of a family, it instantly made us stand up and go, that's exactly what we need. Because it not only was a very easy way to have there be sort of an order that death would be following, but more importantly, it allowed the audience to immediately engage with the family dynamics. We're all a part of a family, good, bad, and different, messy. And by plugging people into a family, we know how these characters, how they interact, and we can just identify ourselves, see reflections of our own family. automatically we are emotionally invested in them in a way that we were never able to do with this random people who suddenly find themselves on death's list. And watching these people unfold and just learning about how those sort of seeming frictions are overridden by an unabiding love for each other does make it an emotional journey, much more so than some of the other Final Destinations would have been otherwise. So the family component added an electric shock of empathy and emotion that was astonishing to see the dividends paid out over the course of the movie. The point is, you feel bad when they die, as opposed to gleefully cheering when they die. And I think that's a better balance to strike. You know what I mean? I think that there's something about it that makes people walk out saying, I had a great time, but I thought about it. It resonated with me. Like even the Tony Todd scene really is poignant and really resonates because we see that he is a person who has been sort of infused with this experience because of what happened 50 years earlier. That was another thing that John Watts brought to the equation, and that allowed us to look at time as an entirely different way to approach the death sequences. Like, how long will death take to do something? What if something that happened 70 years ago, the dividends are just paying out, the dominoes are just landing now? That creatively liberates us to do a lot of interesting things going forward if Final Destination Bloodlines is the hit that we hope it is. The reason why Zach and Adam are the perfect choice to direct this movie is because they came with their presentation that was so intelligent and precise and well thought out and really creative. We would have hired them just based on the presentation they gave. But what they did after that, at the end of the presentation, where at the end of the sequence, a ceiling fan fell on the zoom and cut off Adam's head, and blood goes squirting everywhere. What they did was not only demonstrate they intellectually and emotionally understood how the franchise worked, but then they took the opportunity to have the entire presentation be an example of what the set piece for a Final Destination movie would be had they directed it. They did all the visual effects, they did all the editing, and they put it together, and they capstoned their presentation with that huge, courageous move. If it didn't work, terrible. But not only did it work, but it's cemented for us that these were absolutely the right guys to come in and take Final Destination into a new generation.